Okay, so now that you're starting a fitness program, or let's say that you've watched the video on exercising 6 days per week or at about 60 minutes at a time to get into that daily general habit, what do you do? So, do you just come in and go and walk and things like that? How do you fill this time and make sure you're covering all the elements that you need? Well, there's a few basic things. You can take these all into very advanced details and levels and things like that, but really big picture is what I'd like to look at here. So once you have your schedule structured and you say I'm going to work out at 7 a.m. every single day, 6 days a week, and you have that broken down and framed out into your schedule, how you fit that time is sort of very important in terms of how you recover, how you optimize each parameter, and how you can improve as a whole organism in the right direction to live the most successful, healthy life you can. Because approaching any one-sided approach is not recommended here. You want to get better at all the fitness elements that you can. Now, generally speaking, it will be strength training, flexibility and mobility training, cardiovascular endurance, and then nutrition. So looking at the exercise or physical components of that, again, that'd be strength training, mobility/flexibility, then endurance type training. So how you organize the week, how much of this and that, you can do a million different ways. But if you're starting off, I highly recommend in terms of strength training at least 3 days per week and cover as much as your whole body as possible. You don't really want to go in, if fat loss is your goal, you don't want to go in and isolate small muscle groups. If you come in and do bicep curls and make that a major part of your focus, your arm's about 9% of your body, and you could estimate that your biceps maybe 3% of that arm, or 3% of your body, or 1/3 of that arm. It's such a small muscle group, and it's not expending much energy to burn, raise resting metabolic rate, to burn calories as you rest. It's not burning a whole lot of energy as you're actually training. So you may be getting a better bicep muscle there, but you're not really utilizing strength training at the best capacity to burn body fat. So you want to focus on exercises that use the most muscles at once and burn the most calories per unit of exercise or per set and rep. So that's going to be a compound exercise, or an exercise that utilizes multiple joints at once. You have primary muscles that do the exercise and secondary assistance type muscles that do the exercise. So for example, something like a barbell back squat would train your quadriceps, your hamstrings, your glutes, your erector spine muscles, your core. Your aerobic system is getting worked a lot because you got to get blood and oxygen to all those working muscles. There's a lot more going on systemically, and roughly 80 to 90% or so your body is arguably working to do that exercise. So that's why it's hard. That's why a lot of people don't love them. Some people love them, but it can be an acquired taste. But it's absolutely a fundamental, necessary exercise for posture, sports performance. And don't think of this just as being an athlete. Think of being capable and to perform functionally and appropriately for everyday life. Think of life as a sport almost, and how well you can move around. Doing your activities of daily living, going up and down steps, getting up and off the couch. Think of that as your sport. So squatting is absolutely functional to all those parameters there. So exercises like that will be your best friend in terms of body fat loss, but to gain as much lean body mass as possible. And this isn't to make you Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is to actually put on, it's not easy to gain lean body mass. So going and squatting a little bit is not going to make you gain 50 pounds of muscle. If you're loading up 400 or 500 pounds for sets of 10 reps or something like that, you might see that. But don't fool yourself, that's not going to happen anytime soon. So as you look at your programming, if you're only spending 3 days per week at an hour at a time, you really want to focus on the things that are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck in the smallest amount of time. So that would be those big compound type exercises. Then from there, as the workout goes, you can start to refine and chisel down to more isolation type movements. Once you've really covered your basics and your staples, that's when you might start throwing in, say, a bicep curl, a shoulder fly, a tricep extension, and focusing on some of those smaller muscle groups. Now, just for example, looking at the upper body, if you do want to focus on something that does hit your bicep, but is also a compound exercise, think of something like a pull-up, a chin-up, a pull-down on a machine or a cable, a bent-over row, barbell rows, dumbbell rows, things like that will train your back and your upper back posture muscles and your bicep as well. So it's covering a lot more territory than, per se, that bicep curl. So think in terms of big exercises like that. We like to refer to them as big rocks. Think of a concept as if you took a jar and you wanted to fill it up as quickly and efficiently as possible, you'd fill it up with the biggest rocks you can find instead of small little pebbles and sand and things like that. So fill up that rock as quickly as you can, then add the small pebbles and rocks and build it with as much density as possible, and then perhaps water, and then pack it up as much as you can. And that's really how you would start to organize your fitness program, but you got to focus on the most important priorities first, because think of that jar as, say, a unit of time that you had to fill. that will meet your goals. So you got to really prioritize that accordingly. Now looking at the next parameter here, that would be mobility or flexibility type training. And really thinking about keeping balance in terms of length tension relationship on all your muscle groups. So let's say, for example, for every reaction there's a reaction in the body, or for every pushing muscle group there's a pulling muscle group that complements it. So it's really important that you have a balance here in your body. That's what's going to basically keep you from having postural flaws, prevent injuries, things of that nature, chronic pain, limitations in range of motion, flexibility, and general movements. So much that is simple flexibility and mobility around each given joint. So you want to make sure you're on a basic staple static stretching program, but it's also good to roll and inhibit and do self-myofascial release type techniques to loosen those things up. So as you strength train, and considering you have a nice well-balanced training program, you're doing pushing exercises, pulling exercises, upper body exercises, lower body exercises, and you're balancing things out, then you mobilize things. You would, in a nice idealistic approach, you're actually building a nice well-balanced body there. And so you should find that you move better, you have more strength, you have more energy, you have more range of motion, and you have less pain. So an appropriate training program should kind of really tailor to all those needs. So you should be a better, well-rounded individual in every parameter there. Sometimes you got to realize the difference between good pain and bad pain, and working hard is going to cause some soreness and dings here and there. But that's part of really pushing the envelope. So the faster you want to get there and the more ninja you want to be with training, you got to realize if you want to do the crime, you got to do the time and do your stretching and realize that there's going to be some soreness. So mobilizing, massage, things of that nature are very important there. Now the last piece would be endurance training. So just being able to perform any activity for a given amount of time. Think of this as general physical preparation, or just doing. It can be low grade work, but it also could be even sprint type training. So this depends on what your goal is and how quickly you want to achieve that. I recommend a kind of a blend of both approaches. So we do a lot of high intensity interval training, which is sprint type training, where you might sprint for 15 to 30 seconds and recover from anywhere from 15 seconds to a minute. And you would have intermittent intervals of this to sprint and then go at a recovery pace and sprint and continue for any given period of time. We like to use about 15-minute time blocks for that. And you can do this with sprinting outside, you can do this with biking, swimming, jump ropes, all kinds of bodyweight boot camp type exercises. Then in terms of, say, steady state, or say lower aerobic threshold type exercise, that could be anything from walking to running to jogging, you name it. I don't encourage that you do chronic huge amounts of this. A lot of times I see people want to take on marathons and things of that nature to actually getting into them, whether it's a bucket list concept or they're trying to do this to burn body fat levels. It usually shoots them in the foot to where they start carb loading and things like that and eating more than they realize. They may become more fit and cardiovascularly healthy, but they actually end up gaining a little bit of weight. And at the expense of some orthopedic dings from doing the same repetitive motion over and over and hitting, their hips and knees start to get beat up, their posture starts to round forward a little bit. So although it's a very nice element to a well-rounded fitness program, taking anything to an extreme is not going to be the best idea in terms of having that good balance and healthy lifestyle. So same thing with strength training and mobility and flexibility and endurance. Each one of them taken too far without a proper respect to the rest will cause problems and imbalances and issues, whether it's posture, overdeveloping one muscle group. Being too flexible can be a problem and set you up for injuries with not enough stability at certain joints. And then again, like I mentioned, too much endurance training can be problematic, and in some cases make it harder to lose body fat by elevating cortisol and things like that. So that would be the three main categories to focus on. So how you might organize this into the week, you might do 3 days of strength training per week, and you might do 3 days of endurance cardiovascular training, say sprint training and HIIT training, and working your flexibility type work perhaps that day, or you could do a little bit of that every single day that complements your strength training or your endurance type training. So however you want to organize that and fill in those 60 minutes per day is a great start. See how you go, and then from there, of course, there'll be advancements and ways to alter that. Some people like to then do strength training 6 days a week, and then balance out that with, say, some kind of endurance or cardiovascular training on top of that, whether they do 45 minutes of strength training and then 15 minutes of either sprints or endurance type exercises after that. There's a lot of ways to skin that cat and do that. As I mentioned in the other videos, some people start to exercise a bit more than that 60 minutes, and they may do an hour of strength training and anywhere from 15 minutes up to an hour of cardiovascular type training after that. So you definitely don't need to start there, but depending on your goals, you may build up to something like that. So the last thing I did mention was nutrition being part of that. So of course that's a whole other topic, but nutrition of course is extremely important to your success or failure in health and fitness, body composition change. So you can't out-train a crappy diet. So you got to focus on that. You can't just come into this, eat whatever you want, and just expect to just train it all off. So you'll be chasing your tail for a long time there. But we'll talk about that next time.